Saturday? What do you got? Your Saturday, your wife's working? Yeah,
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Hope everybody had a great holiday and New Year's, even though that's 4 months ago now or whatever it is. I don't guess we've been together since then.
Some of us were, sir, but we didn't quite have a quorum.
Well, once again, good morning and thank you for coming. I was going to see, I don't think we have any new faces, so we don't need to introduce anybody. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at the minutes from our June 19, 2018 meeting?
Yes, sir, move to approve.
We have a motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is project discussion. And Dan, I would imagine that you're the guy on that, correct?
I guess that's me. What we tried to do here is capture everything we've done to date. In just a couple of pages, we've provided this on the county website. I'm sure you all have been following the news. There's a lot of discussion about impact fees and additional revenue and a 1 cent sales tax going to referendum August 27th and a special election. So we thought this would be good opportunities. Before we get really too deep into FY20, we're going to talk about some of those projects, but to kind of recap everything that's been done. The Board of County Commissioners has planned 2 budget and infrastructure workshops for next month, one in the Pace area and one down at Tiger Point, to talk about some of these things, but other stuff as well, things like the gas tax and what we've done with the additional pennies that were added to the gas tax and how many more miles of roads are being resurfaced in the county, how many miles of dirt roads have been paved, those kinds of things, and try and tie it all together for the public, because there is a groundswell of interest in this. So what we put together is just that recap, what it's authorized for, what our voter referendum said was for capital equipment, public facilities, law enforcement, fire and public safety, recreation, natural resources, transportation, and drainage. Those were the approved things, and that is the draft language that the board reviewed yesterday at the meeting, and that would be the same language that goes on the ballot in August. Is the same thing that was approved in 2016. It would just say to implement a 1 cent sales tax starting 1 January, and then the half cent would end. It doesn't go up to 1.5. You all know that, but just wanted to be clear for the record. What we can't use lost for, we can't use it for insurance and employee costs. We can't use it for employee retirement. FRS increases are funded out of the appropriate revenue source. And we can't fund the salaries, position upgrades, any raises, cost of living adjustments, or anything for staff. We can't use it for any just operational expenses. Jane reminded me this, you know, if you need fuel, you can't use it for fuel for the sheriff's cars or fuel for the public works trucks. That's not an authorized use of the infrastructure sales tax. We went through a process in April of 17, shortly after I joined the county, to look at how to allocate the money. There was a long list of projects that was put together by the staff before I got here. We went through 3 public meetings around the county and came up with the pie chart that you see here. We held 5% as unallocated, but subsequent to that discussion, we've spent those monies or allocated those monies to public safety and to transportation and drainage. So on the bottom right there, you see the revenue received to date is really right on track, about $8 million a year, maybe a little bit less than $8 million a year. What's been allocated is $22.5 million, and what's been spent is a little less than $8 million. And that's just what we have invoices for that have gone out the door. But all that 22.5 is appropriated and allocated to specific projects. I thought we had a page that had FY 17 and 18.
It is.
Okay. I don't have that. I also have to say that I memorized that. But you see the FY 17 and 18 project list. Complete projects are indicated by the green check mark. Those projects that are in design or in construction are indicated by the asterisk. We show in FY 2018, just with the additional infrastructure sales tax road paving, that 22 additional miles of road were resurfaced throughout the county in the 5 districts.
So Dan, on 2017, I apologize. On 2017 then, what was our total road surfacing? Do we have that?
As this is the infrastructure sales tax, I didn't include that in this, but you can see here it's 1.5 million in infrastructure surtax went to road resurfacing.
Yeah.
22 miles.
Well, I knew that was for 18. I just wasn't sure about 17. Yeah, but okay, that's fine.
17, we did not allocate any money
Oh, that's
to
right. Okay.
road pavings in FY
I
17.
got you. Okay, I apologize. Okay.
So, the FY 17, we kind of, as we kind of got started, the collection started the 1st of January. We got the allocations approved by the board in May. And we identified some key projects, the new radio tower in Navarre to increase coverage down in the south end of the county. That was a project that came in about $20,000 under budget. And the fire department requests. Then we did a couple of park projects out of the FY 17 amounts, one in each district. And then we also undertook some immediate transportation and drainage projects, resurfacing Woodbine Road. The Sweet Bay Bridge construction was a great success. It was about $200,000. We did that in-house with our bridge crew. And so that we saved almost $200,000 on that project by doing it in-house. Allentown Road resurfacing and Edgewood Drive was on there, but that's kind of gotten pushed out to it's being in design now. So those were the immediate FY 17 projects. Any questions on the FY 17 or 18 list? Status, where we are, everybody's...
Yes, for the FY 18, under the public facilities, the new Navarre public bathrooms, restrooms, 180K, where are we sitting on that?
That should go out to bid in the next 30 days. The final designs being, we added in the new shower towers to that design, so they were adding that in at the last minute, but should go out to bid in the next 30 days for that new restroom complex and the new shower complexes.
Remind me, Dan, that's on the beach?
On the beach, right where the current restroom is, just down from the pier.
And Dan, just for clarification, in the event that the new referendum passes, this would stay the same, it would just be added to, is that correct? The project list. The project list would, the project list would stay the same. We at our budget workshop last February, and if you're interested, we could certainly call that up, but we kind of did a look 5 and 10 years out at major projects, and there's about $280 million of projects, everything from turn lanes to jail expansion to traffic capacity increase projects that are necessary, and so that list of added projects is already being developed. Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any other questions for Dan?
All right.
I've got one moving forward on the emergency communication system, if it's the right time. I'm not sure. That's for the FY 19.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so basically, and I want to thank Sabrina for, one, updating the website. She did a great job. And then also I had asked a question about this that she got back with me, so thank you. So basically, Dan, you and I talked yesterday, and I wasn't aware that this was going to be a reoccurring lease, basically, infinitely, to maintain this. I originally thought when we approved it the first year was just for equipment, that was for truly capital. Using, lost money for leased dollars, I'm sure it's legal or we wouldn't be doing it. But I think if this is going to be a reoccurring thing forever, I would think we want to push that to the general fund and then, reallocate these funds, and especially in the out years, for other true capital expenditures. Something I just wanted to throw out to the board.
I'm sorry, that particular lease ends in 2 or 3 years. So that 800,000 is not perpetual.
Well, there will be an upgrade we're tied to Escambia County with the network that our emergency response system rides. And so there will be a discussion going forward as to how we upgrade the system this next go-around. It is a capital expenditure. We're just doing it under a lease as opposed to a purchase. And that is the most affordable option that we could come up with. And I think it's appropriate from the infrastructure surtax. It's a public safety requirement that supports fire, EMS, and police throughout the county. And so I think having that redundancy with Escambia County and some of the ability to loop back is important. We'll look as we go forward, but I would recommend that we continue funding that expenditure out of the infrastructure surtax.
Dan, just for clarification, would it be the same thing as, say, purchasing equipment versus leasing it? You're basically still doing the purchase, it's just a difference in wording?
Yes.
Is that in short term?
Yes. And through the lease agreement, included is the system upgrades as they come, so you get those built into the contract, if you will. So more to come on the upgrade. We're just starting to talk about it with Escambia County now.
Any idea what the lifespan is on that?
I do not know.
Something with upgrades they can support for the
Years.
foreseeable future?
Yes.
So one further clarification, Dan, that the 809 will cease in 3 years, roughly, and then it'll just be strictly purchasing the upgrades?
It will be a new lease agreement for the next generation system, I would say. That would probably be the best way to describe it.
All right. Any other questions?
Just real quick, Dan, the unallocated amounts, is that the same as the unprogrammed amounts on the bottom of the back page?
No.
Okay.
They've been allocated, so all the money has been allocated to those areas, so the unprogrammed amounts is, I'm probably using some Pentagon military lingo there, but we don't have any, a project necessarily against that. Major Brinkman's is here, we're going to talk about the FY20 list. What we have in Sheriff Automotive is 578. What we have unprogrammed in public safety is 450. Major Brinkman is going to tell us that he needs 2.2 million just for cars. So quick math, you add the 450 and 578, we're about 1.2 million short. Just in cars. Doug, check my math? Yes, sir. Good? Yes, sir, you are. And that's not including other sheriff capital equipment requests, which over the last couple of years, you can see have been somewhere in the neighborhood of another $700,000 on top of the automotive request. So so it's unprogrammed, but it's allocated to public safety.
How much remains unallocated, I guess, then?
I would say none unallocated, but unprogrammed that don't have projects would be that total amount there, which is about 2.4 million.
Okay. And one last question. Out of the 22 million allocated, does that include the grants that you obtained for these projects?
That does not include the
This
grants.
is just a half cent.
This is just the infrastructure surtax. So
How
on
much
top
money-
of this, we've talked about
Yeah.
in the past, it's about $10 million of grant dollars from the federal government or from the state. Some was, as small as a $50,000 FERDAP grant for Florida Town, and as much as $4.7 million for the Settlers Colony HMGP project from the federal government.
So we could add 10 million to this 22, basically be 32 million.
That is the amount of work getting done, yes, sir.
I just want to say that is outstanding, that is extremely outstanding. For us, we're getting a lot more than a half cent. Not only are the visitors paying, 30% of the tax, we're getting almost 50% of additional bump just by the grants. Basically, there's lots of ways you could look at it. One way I look at it, we're only paying 0.25% tax because of all the extra money we're getting. But that's outstanding, Dan. Really good job.
And I think we have a couple of pending grants. I don't know that the prognosis is great, but under the HMGP program for Metron Estates, we've submitted under 2 different disaster allocations to try and get funding for that project.
Great. Thank you.
Are there grants that we might qualify for that we don't now because we don't offer enough in match with the collection of a full 1 cent?
I don't know that there's grants that we would qualify because of a match percentage. I would have to look at that. I know there are grants that were limited in because we don't have certain programs in place. And that would be some of the environmental grants. Escambia County has a TMDL program, and that allows them to apply for certain EPA grants that we don't have a TMDL program for, but none that are limited because of a match perspective.
All right, and Dan, I would add, and I know I sound like a little bit of a broken record on this, but, especially in light of what's probably going to happen on Thursday, it's very important, at least from what I'm hearing in my conversations in Santa Rosa County, that we get this leveraged amount out there, and people are fully aware of our ability to use that to leverage, these further dollars. So any more detail? Is there more detail already that I just haven't seen on that? Or is that something that can be put together reasonably easy? Because that, again, is in my mind, a reason to be looking at the impact fee versus the other method.
I would say we presented in a couple of different forums and formats.
Right.
We can think about how to best, in a summary like this, to project that additional funding that is gained through leveraging the infrastructure sales tax.
Okay. Very good.
FY19, we're in the process on most things there. The P Ridge Connector Road construction, obviously, we're still just in the design phase for that. And then some of these LAP projects, the sidewalks and things, we're ready to go to bid on some of those, but because they have been a long time from project conception to now bidding, we're expecting to need to make up some funding on some of those projects, specifically the Hamilton Bridge sidewalk project. Switching gears to look at FY20.
Real quick.
Yes, sir.
On the bottom of FY19, under the recreation natural resources, no, the 75K for the ADA compliance improvements, where are we at on that, and what are we going to do with it?
That's being allocated into projects that are underway. So some of that money will go into some of the park projects that were done.
Miracle League, can we put some of it into that?
Some of them could certainly go into the Miracle League project, but it's as we're building our ADA compliance plan now for county infrastructure. We're looking at buildings first, and I would say buildings first and projects underway at the same time. Those are the two things. Anytime we're undertaking a project, we're building that ADA compliance into the project. We did that at Florida Town Park, at Optimus Park, and at Chumuckla Park.
Hey, Dan, a quick 2019 question before we move on. We had the Edgewood project in 17 at $1,080,000, and now it's $1,880,000 in 2019.
We had $1,080,000 and then a separate $800,000 for a sidewalk or multi-use path. So we just mashed the two together. One of our continuing engineering service, Ken Horn, I believe it is the engineering and design on that project. So we're doing it all at one time, one construction period to widen the road and to add a multipurpose path on the, I believe, west side of Edgewood Drive. FY '21, this is the current draft list of projects. There are a couple that I would like to talk to you about that kind of came up from a couple of meetings I had yesterday. One, you see on the FY19 list, there's a Fidelis Community Facility, that park up in the north end of the county. We identified some funding for that project to see what could be done with the old Fidelis School. At the same time, we have a FERDAP grant, $200,000 from the state with $200,000 from Commissioner Salter matching that. So we have a $400,000 FERDAP improvement going on at Fidelis Park. In the site planning and engineering work that's going on early, it doesn't look like saving that school is going to be possible or financially feasible. So there'll be some public meetings. We got to engage with the community there in Fidelis. I think that community facility money, we may look at repurposing to support the FERDAP project. Right now, we have $400,000 from FERDAP and from Commissioner Salter, but the initial cost estimate is about $660 for that project. So as we develop the FY20 list and the projects, I expect to come back to you next time with more detail, but maybe that Fidelis Community Facility project doesn't occur and we take 150 or 200 and put it towards the FERDAP improvements that are necessary there. So it's early. I just wanted to make you aware, and we'll be discussing that as we go out throughout the budget cycle here. The second one is a project at the Santa Rosa Sportsplex. We got to meet with Para about this and figure out where this might go, but we have received a grant of $30,000 from the National Fitness Campaign to put in a fitness park. If anybody's been down to the Blue Wahoo Stadium and seen the fitness complex there, it's the same grant-making agency that has granted Santa Rosa County initial seed money. We would need to match that. In that case, it's a match where we are 3 to their 1. It's about $100,000. There's an opportunity to try and fundraise and get sponsorships for that, which is some of what Pensacola did, but there's also there will be a need for county money to go towards that project. So as that develops over time, I'll come back with a final number, but I'd like to put a placeholder of $100,000 in to the FY20 budget for that project. And if that is successful, I would look to do that again the next year in the south end of the county somewhere, whether that's at Tiger Point or some other Navarre youth sports complex or the Navarre soccer field, wherever it might fit down there. I want to try and use that resource again in the next fiscal year. So those are two that are coming, and we can walk through the rest, or if you have questions on the rest. I already mentioned that Major Brinkman's is here, and he's talked to us before that the automotive need is about $2.2 million. We're obviously short $1 million. I don't know if this board wants to discuss or recommend any reallocation. Mr. Henry, as you point out, it's all allocated in the project areas, and it's allocated there because we have projects coming. In the recreation area, we're working on additional field space in the south end of the county with Pensacola State College. We're waiting on a final survey of about 15 acres down there to put additional field space in, and that's a project that will require funding, and that's why that money is programmed in the recreation line to do projects like that. So I am hesitant to recommend any reallocation between the identified areas, but that's open for discussion and obviously not a decision today. But so this is kind of where we are and what we have laid out for the next fiscal year, and then we have one additional year of projects in 21.
Thank you, Dan.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Okay,
Mr. Kemp.
regarding the, sheriff's automotive equipment, I think this is something, again, we need to really focus on our campaign to sell our enhanced, scope of the lost, for people to better understand exactly what it's taking for the sheriff's department to keep the cars going. I mean, there's no doubt, it's like everything else. Most people just don't understand the kind of money. Right now, it's just not here in this bucket. Something has to be done to meet their need. I mean, we've got more flooding problems than ever. I see you've got a really good two good projects on here for Metron and Sunrise for drainage projects. We need to expand that about 100%, somehow to get ahead of the flooding problems. The South End Service Center, it's underwater when we have 2 inches of rain. Across the street at the Public Health Center, it is in real bad shape still. So, I mean, the needs are incredible out there in front of everybody's eyes. And just how we go to get there, and I mean, again, I think that's what you were talking about earlier, is forecasting out where we can see the extra half cent would get us. I think is just going to be instrumental to get there, because this is downright scary to see,
So,
you deal with this every day.
Yes, sir, I do. That's what you all pay me for.
Yeah.
A couple things. The South End Health Department across the street from the South Service Center in FY '18, we have a project in design now with one of our continuing engineering contractors to improve the drainage there. That's a $473,000 project to help the South End Health Department location. These projects are to do some upgrades and improvements at the South Service Center. The parking lot is in need of resurfacing or painting or both, and there are some roof issues there that we're mapping out now, the best way to resolve those. I think the Metron Estates, to your point there, Mr. Kemp, that is the matching money. $850,000 is the 25% match for the project, for those applications we have in now with the state and FEMA for HMGP funding, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. The Sunrise Drive drainage, we did the project at the south end of Sunrise Drive. This is the north end of Sunrise Drive. This would fully fund the construction along with the East Bay culvert upgrades. That's increasing some culvert sizes across East Bay, and that would fully fund the construction of that project. But the Metron Estates, I wanted to point out, is just the match money for those grant applications that I mentioned previously.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Dan, I know I've said it probably a number of times at these meetings. As the commissioners kind of push forward with this full 1 cent local option sales tax, I think that the Navarre and Gulf Breeze voters are going to have an issue with seeing a 39% allocation to public safety and recreation and a 52% allocation to transportation and drainage, just for what that's worth. I think that creates an obstacle in getting the full 10-year 1 cent passed. I don't know what we can do about that, but again, that's just throwing that out there as a potential landmine.
I think this allocation was set after a series of public meetings. We're having some public workshops, as I mentioned, next month. That can be certainly something that we put on the agenda there just to mention. That's a board set allocation that we could take a recommendation back to revise that. I'll tell you, I asked the sheriff to give me, as we're putting together that capital 10-year look, to give me a look at what he thinks his needs are for the next 10 years. And that alone was about $95 million.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. The other question I have is with regard to that, the communications lease fee that we're paying now, that ends in a couple of years. Is there any thought to keeping that money allocated in public safety, since it's currently allocated in public safety?
Absolutely. I would recommend keeping that funding in public safety. It's the emergency response network that all of our first responders use.
No, I mean, once the lease fee ends, keeping it allocated.
Well, it'll be a new.
It would be a new lease.
Oh, there'll be a new
It'd
lease
It would be
fee?
a new,
Yeah,
it would be a new fee. We're working now with Escambia County to.
I understand. I thought there was
establish
just going to be some upgrade cost at the end of the
It-
current lease fee.
that. It's a next generation system.
Okay, so we'll just roll
Yeah.
into a new lease fee.
Yes.
Understand.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Dan, couple quick questions for you. The south end service center parking lot, you mentioned resurfacing. Is that simply going to be a resurfacing or possibly a redesign with some expansion of capacity down there?
I think this project is just a resurfacing. We can certainly, I mean, again, there's money in public facilities that we could look adding to that project to expand it a little bit and maybe improve the flow and expand the number of spots.
Well, it's always, well, I shouldn't say always, but in the more recent years, it's pretty obvious that we've kind of reached capacity for people to be able to come in there and park, and there's always people parking on the grass, and thought maybe just some redesign there might help with not only the flooding issues, but possibly just creating some higher capacity. And one other quick question. You mentioned something in negotiations with Pensacola State College. Is that leasing some space from them for different types of sports fields, or if you could just give us a little more detail on that?
It's more of a, I would say, a land lease swap. Pensacola State College, we've agreed to provide land in the industrial park for them to establish, they got a grant from the the Governor's Job Growth Grant Fund to establish a CDL licensing school as well as a lineman school. And so we've agreed to provide space in the industrial park north of Cape Horn there, and at $1 a year, and they're going to provide reciprocal space at the Midway campus, $1 a year for us to put sports fields in. Now, the cost is to put in facilities, to put in a road infrastructure, parking, and a lot of grass.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? My only comment, Dan, was I don't know what the agenda at these workshops looks like, but I do think it would probably be a good idea to at least have a brief discussion on the allocation pie moving forward. I've yet to meet any person who has a stake in any section of that pie that thinks it's right. And I'm not here to say it's right or wrong, but I do think a little more discussion is probably in order.
More transportation and drainage, less what?
Well, as I've said a time or two before, the ladies that are involved with the recreation part especially, they're pretty vocal about their needs, and I suggested maybe we put them in a room with the sheriff and let them duke it out, and when they come out, they give us the numbers, and anyway, I think you get my drift.
Can we put it on pay-per-view and maybe make some money?
Probably so. All right, anything else? Okay, so under other business discussion, we pretty well covered that. I see we probably have a few members of
Okay.
the audience.
I did have one other question. Last time we met, Dan, and I'm not sure if it was the last time or the previous time, you had brought up an idea of putting in some soccer fields up here behind the golf course, the Moors. I was wondering if you can give us a quick update on that, if it's even still a...
I still think it's a good idea, but my good ideas don't. At this point, no, sir. I still think it's a viable option, but I think with the expansion in the deal we've worked with Pensacola State College, we're going to alleviate some of the field space issues in the south end with the acquisition of 60 acres near the Chumuckla Soccer Park with federal dollars. We're going to be able to alleviate some of the overcrowding for para-football. So I don't know that there is a pressing need. I still think it would be a good feature for the county to have, would be something small, not Orange Beach or Bay County size tournament complex area, but a place where we could host those kinds of things. I think it would be a great opportunity for that area to have some development, to bring some hotels, to bring some restaurants. It's just down the street from where our courthouse is going to be. I think there are a lot of positives to it, but I don't think that there's support right now to move forward with that size and scale of project.
Is there on the property at Pensacola State College, and maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but is there a current master plan or anything they're working towards on how to develop that?
No, sir. The Pensacola State College is going to provide us land that doesn't conflict with their master plan for like the next 20 years. And our planning is simply field space as far as we got. We have to get the survey done, and that lease approved is the next step, and then get a little bit of design work and engineering done to put those in.
Do we know roughly how large a space that is? How many acres we're looking at?
About 15 acres is what that's what we've provided, and that's what Dr. Meadows is providing back.
I just have a quick question about if the language for the new, for going up to the 1 cent has been decided, whether there'll be an option to keep the half cent, or it kind of sounded like it was just that it will sunset and go to a 1 cent, that's the vote, or that it will not be existent at all. Could you clarify?
Yeah, the draft language is on our agenda yesterday, and it is to initiate a 1 cent sales tax that starts the 1st of January 2020 and would end the half cent sales tax on the same date. So if the referendum didn't pass, this half cent would continue through its 5-year existence and could look to be renewed the half cent, next year.
Okay, is there anything else? Dan?
One more quick item. To piggyback on Edwin earlier, the grant success that we've had, is that primarily Sheila and Erica and those folks?
It is Sheila's department. Erica.
Can you pass along our
I will.
thanks for that?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Dan, we weren't going to take any kind of action on the draft list today, is that correct?
No, sir, just awareness.
Okay.
The first time we've met this
Right.
fiscal year. I think
Okay.
we'll meet again in June, probably after our budget workshop and after I have a better picture of the overall budget.
Okay.
And projects. I will take, the comments and discussion here, and we'll take a look at some of these projects, specifically the South Service Center, and see if we need to wrap that up into something a little bit bigger to address some of the issues there. But other than that, no, I think we'll come back with a
Okay.
more refined list. We should, by June, see on there funding for the field space project, the field project in Midway, and then we'll go from there.
Very good. All right. Anything else? Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this august group this morning? Mr. Jorgensen, how are you this morning?
I'm good, Mr. Chairman. I want to first thank you for your work. It's not easy to try to determine how these proceeds are applied. I want to call your attention to a capital facility that the county owns in the city of Milton that soon they'll be moving. The courthouse will be found on Avalon. The movement of that facility to Avalon has a reasonably profound impact on the historic central business district of the city of Milton. Having said that, that facility is ripe for repurposing. And I would ask that you give that consideration in your deliberations as you move forward. The cost was first identified in the early 2000s. It would require a capital investment on the county's part, but I believe that investment would be eligible for the application of these funds. It's important to the city. Right now, we've got a facility that leaves something to be desired. We'd like to be left with something that's desirable. If you'd think about that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out, sir. On that, has the city thought about keeping the original part of the courthouse, knocking off the wings of the back end that were all add-ons, keeping the original part for historical purposes, and then doing something else around that?
It's a county facility, however, the central core has intrinsic value. It's historically significant, I believe, should be protected. The wings are 2 brick boxes, one on each end. They have little value. The modulars needed to be gone the day after they were placed there. And we need our street open back up. Oak Street runs right under those modulars. And we'd like that street to be replaced. We'd like that festival grounds to be something more than it is today. Having said that, if you go down there and you get a chance in the next month, we're spending about $250,000 just improving those festival grounds. So we're investing in that part of our community. We'd ask the county, leave us with something, again, that we would find to be desirable. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for him. Can you share with us a little bit more about maybe what your vision or some ideas for that building would be?
Well, I mean, it's a county facility. As the county grows, and you're all cognizant of the growth rate in Santa Rosa County, it's tremendous. The county will need additional office space. The core of that courthouse could be repurposed to meet those needs. Milton is the county seat. Obviously, the administrative apparatus of Santa Rosa County is found here. To use the facility in that form or fashion may be appropriate. It will take some design and some analysis to make a determination, but unquestionably, we'd like to see it put to a use that would benefit the community from an economic standpoint.
All right. Any other questions? I would think that if there was ever a project that had any possibility of grants and such, that repurposing the old courthouse would probably be pretty high on that list. And the ability, as we said before, to try to leverage some funds, that is if, I guess, the board decides to go that direction.
I think it's appropriate to think about it and have some conceptual ideas, but my focus is building the new courthouse for the next 2 years.
Yeah. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Well, again, I appreciate everybody coming. I appreciate you staff and getting us our information together. And I guess the next meeting, you said, Dan, you presume will be in June?
We'll look at June, the last half of June.
Okay.
The Florida Association of Counties annual conference is the first part of June. We've canceled that regular board meeting the second week of June. So we would look at the third or fourth week of June, having this committee meet again. That will be after we have our next budget workshop, which will probably be mid-June, about the 10th or 11th of June in there. So we'll have a better idea of the whole budget picture. These projects will be a little further refined, and we'll present that at that time. And at that point, potentially look for a recommendation for inclusion in the budget prior to our July budget workshop.
All right, very good. If there's nothing else, meeting adjourned.